Magical Warrior Training. Miss Octavo was sitting at her desk, her half glasses perched precisely on her snout, and her appendix involved in her half dozen appendix activities when Alex shuffled in. He stopped awkwardly just inside the doorway, feeling sheepish about having missed class the previous day, watching the octogator scribble with one arm on a paper on her desk and another arm on the chalkboard behind her, while a third painted on an easel at her side. When Miss Octava noticed Alex, she stopped all her activities and smiled. "Come in," she said. "Sit." Alex slid up to her desk and sat in the chair beside her. "Feeling better today?" Miss Octava asked. Yes. "Oh, I'm a bit worried about you," Miss Octava smiled faintly. Her voice took a serious tone. "Would you care to talk about what you've been bothering lately?" "You, Alex?" Alex blushed crimson. He squirmed in his seat. Miss Octava waited patiently. Finally, she patted him on the shoulder. "It's okay. Let's talk about your magical warrior training instead. I'm sure you're excited, as I am, to start." Alex breathed a sigh of relief. "Yes, ma'am." "In fact, you're probably wondering why I held you back this long. I must have been executing for you." "Well," Alex looked at his shoes. "It seems like it was fun for everybody else to pull their spells and pranks on me. Thought of Lanny. I felt like I must have been really bad at this, to be held back so long." Miss Octava closed her eyes and sighed. When she opened her eyes, she looked to the classroom doorway and nodded. "Come in, Marcus," she said. Alex turned in the chair. Mr. Today entered the room and closed the door behind him. "I'm afraid that I am the one to blame for your troubles, Alex," he said. Alex didn't know what to say, and all he could think of was, "Oh." "I do not want you to blame Miss Octava, for she was following my orders." Mr. Today rested his fingers on the edge of Miss Octava's desk, but he did not sit down. "All I can tell you now, that is, I held you because I thought I was protecting you and our time, but I was wrong, my boy. You have gifts beyond compare." "But I was strong, my boy. I look forward to watching your progress." Thank you, sir." Alex desperately wanted to know how holding him back was protecting anyone, but he dared not ask. Mr. Today nodded, and Alex thought he were wary. There was a slight twinkle in them as well. "Now let's get to work," he smiled and left the room. Alex blinked. "Well, that's settled now, isn't it?" Miss Octava said hurriedly. Let's get to work, shall we?" Alex nodded swiftly, and a grin spread across his face as Miss Octava pulled a compartment vest from her classroom closet. She handed it to him. "Congratulations," she said, her smile toothy and genuine. Alex put it on. "Thanks," he said, choked up to say more. Finally, he thought. Finally. "First," Miss Octava said, "we'll discuss fundamental of magic." She opened a drawer and pulled out a handful of ordinary art supplies, a paintbrush, a pencil, a rubber eraser, several paper clips, and a piece of chalk. Alex watched her lay them all out on the desk. Miss Octava took a paper clip, unrounded it, and bent it so it looked more like a triangle, with two ends crossing and sticking out permanently. With her another appendix, she did the same to the other paper clips. Everything we create here in our time was a little bit of magic in it already, Alex. So the true basic for these tools to work as weapons in your mind and your ability to concentrate and direct the objects to do what they are supposed to do." She handed 5 of the newly sharp-shaped clips to Alex and kept 5 for herself. "In this shape, we call them scatter clips," she said. Alex soon saw why. Miss Octava glided around the desk and pulled one arm back as she was trying to throw a baseball. Right now, Alex, I'm concentrating on the picture on the wall across the room. I'm focusing on the center of it, and that is where I want to direct my throw. She threw the handful of shatter clips, and together all five soared toward the center of the portrait. At the last second, they separated, and verge edges of the canvas struck soundly through the wooden frame into the wall. "Cool," muttered Alex under his breath. Miss Octava flashed him a toothy grin, but grew serious again. "Your mind must be able to focus on the center of your target, Alex, and you need to trust that the shadow clips will find the edges on their own. If you do not have faith in the clips, they will not veer properly and they will not work correctly. So it is important to be calm and to be thinking clearly when you're using these items as weapons if you wish to be successful." Alex nodded, the shadow clips in his hand becoming moist with nervous sweat. "May I try?" "Fire away, indeed." Alex pulled his left arm back and focused on the center of a portrait, then flung it with all his might. The shadow clips backed into the center of the portrait and clattered onto the floor. Alex's face fell. Miss Octava smiled. "If you managed to do it the first time, you have been in our time first in our time history to do it. Try again, this time focusing on throwing it accurately rather than forcefully. The clips have the magical power to get there. We don't want you throwing your arm out of its socket on your first day." She chuckled as Alex scurried over to the wall to pick up his clips. Alex's second try resulted in one clip veering off beautifully up the upper left corner of the portrait, while the rest of the clips fell usefully on the floor again. "Well done," Miss Octava said, praised. "I have a theory that left hand pick up on the throwing spells more easily than the righties do." "It was a good one to start with, and you have proven my theory worthy, my boy," Alex said, not quite delighted, as his instructor seemed to be over the process, but thrilled nothing less to finally have the chance to use art as a weapon. "Mind you," Miss Alex warned, "shadow clips are not to be toyed with. They can be lethal, or at least cause great harm when coupled with verbal indications. But for now, we'll stick with the silent method." "Try again." Alex concentrated and threw again and again and again. When their hour of training was nearly over, he had success in carefully embedding the shadow clips into the edges of the portrait 5 times in a row. "Now," Miss Octava said, "throw them at me." "What? No, I can't." "Yes, you can," she said. "I trust you. You will do fine. But I want to see what the clips will do when you have a live enemy." "But, Alex, it's an order." Miss Octava stood as tall as she could against the wall and made sure all her appendages were down at her sides, not floating about as they sometimes did when she was thinking hard. Alex hesitated, staring helplessly at his instructor. "How can I? What if something goes wrong?" Miss Octava stared at Alex. "Alex, I cannot express how urgent it is that you get over your fear. But one day, I expect sooner rather than later, you will have a fight. It is my job to prepare you. Concentrate, focus, and throw. Do it now." Her stern voice echoed in Alex's ears. He nodded, pulled his arm back, focused on her center of gravity, and concentrated. He threw the shadow clips. They soared together as one bunch, and then at the last possible moment, they separated from the rack, found their marks, and struck fast. Miss Octava didn't even blink. "Good. Now see? I'm stuck here. The clips have secured me to this wall through my clothing. They had not pierced my skin. You have succeeded in stopping me from moving, attacking or fighting until I can manage to release myself from their grasp." Alex, who had been holding his breath all this time, sighed in relief. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with the back on his hand. Release, Miss Octopus said, and the shadow clips dropped to the floor. She stepped away from the wall and gathered them up. So, Alex said, thinking out loud, the enemy has to be standing in front of a wall for them to work. That's not very convenient. Not necessarily a wall. A tree would do, but there's other ways to direct the clips. She lended inconspicuously. Your friends likely haven't gotten to this in their training yet, since they learned their on focus spells first, but I'll tell you if you promise not to use it on anyone but a true enemy. Alex's eyes widened. He nodded. I promise. Miss Octopus grinned. If your target is standing in an open area, your vertical component spell is propel. You say it when you release the clips. The clips will then veer off as usual, but they'll continue to fly, dragging your enemy as far as necessary until they find something to attach to. Smokes, Alex said, his eyes looking up. Indeed, sometimes you can pick up another enemy or two along the way, and then they'll be stacked. It's a great fun to watch, she admitted. You must be careful, though, that there are no friends in the path behind your enemy, or they could be snagged as well. Wow, Alex said. What else can they do? He held the shadow clips in his hand and looked them down with new admiration. Well, Miss Octopus said, growing serious again. As I said before, they can cause serious injury or death. But one must know the verbal components for that. What is it? Alex said. Miss Octopus hesitated. She pursed her wide lips together, hiding all her teeth. I don't think you're quite ready for that. It's an upper-level spell, a bit too dangerous in the hands of a first year. Alex nodded, even though he was very disappointed. I understand, he said. He was just thankful to be learning spells at all. But his mind raced, wondering what the powerful words could possibly be. Lessons and warnings. Alex flew through his first week of magical warrior training, determined to catch up to the others, whether he wasn't in class or in training. Learning how to paint himself invisible, studying slam poetry charms, or drawing chalk outlines that will freeze a targeted person in one position indefinitely. He was in his room practicing all these things. He slept in his classes late and left early so he wouldn't have to talk to anyone. He took most of his meals in his room, still placating disgust at Lanny for continuing to baggering with him with her pranks. He didn't respond to any of his friends who had left messages for him through his backboard, though Sylvia, of course, delivered all of the messages rather loudly. Alex was desperate to have the shush button back, and so it was that since the governor's visit, Alex had completely abandoned his friends. Yet he missed the companionship they had all had during those moments when they finally weren't laughing at him or disgusted by him. Finally, one morning, Alex decided to come down to the dining room to eat. Why won't you answer our messages? Lani demanded over breakfast. She spouted dramatically. Yes, why? Megan said. Alex put his breakfast on the table and sat down. He was tired of being yelled at. He looked at Salmon, who simply raised an eyebrow and took a spoonful of forest jam toast. Hello, Samhead, Alex said. His mouth was too full to say anymore. It's not like we're going to yell at you. We're worried since you haven't been around. I wasn't worried, Sam had said after swallowing. You were worried. I meant Meg and me. Lanny shot at Sam at a cross look. I wasn't worried either, offered Megan. Well, not much anyway. Lanny blushed furiously and flounced in her seat. Fine, I was worried. Well, get on with that, then, Alex said. Have at me and get over with it. You mean the governor's inspecting thing? Asked Megan. It's over. Hardly anybody's talking about it now. Yeah, right. Why is Mr. Morning sitting over there and shooting pins at me with her eyes? Megan turned to look at her focus instructor and waved. Miss Morning started and blinked, and then her face broke into a pleasant, almost sheepish smile as she nodded hello. She wasn't even looking at you. Alex shrugged and began to respond with a giant blackboard in the dining hall came to life. Oscar, for that was his name, spoke. Attention, students! Please report to the theater in place for your first class this morning. The children could hear the announcement ringing in the stereo throughout the mansion. Oscar melted into the screen once again, and the words he had just spoken were written in large neon letters, sure to catch the attention of even the least aware. Oh, look, Samus said. They added bright colors to make sure you don't miss. On a normal day, when Alex might have been in a better mood, he would have been laughed at or fired back a reply just as a snide. But there hadn't been ordinary days for Alex in well over a month. And even though he was still with his first weeks of warrior training, he was still very hurt that Lani kept knocking him off his feet with spells even though he asked her to stop, and he still felt bad about the mess he caused with the governor's visit, and he was still very lonely, missing Aaron and probably in need of a kind word, but none of his friends seemed to compel him to give it now that he snubbed them so much. And he didn't much care about Sam's sarcasm with this particular morning after he gotten a full dose of mocking from Sylvie already, who had laughed when Alex had failed several times to cast an invisibility paper spell on himself. And so, instead of ignoring it, Alex shoved his chair back and leaned towards Samid, his clenched fist on the table, a wild look in his eye. Not funny, for sure. Jeez, Alex, it was a joke. I had enough about everybody's blasted jokes, Alex said. Ease up, man, Sam had said, pushing his chair back slowly. He knew Alex was no match for him. He didn't want to have to punch him in the face again. Me? Ease up? Oh, that's right. Alex slowly moved around the table towards Sam. Lani stood up. I'll take him down for you, Sam. She began speaking in Kantian. Alex whirled her face to her. And you. One day, soon you're going to be very sorry what you did. He stopped shortly, and Lani pointed her hair above her head. Shrieked suddenly, frozen mid-spell. She fell to the floor. Immediately, the dining room erupted in shouts and fearful screams. What the? Who? Alex whipped around to see what had happened. Sam had a shocked look on his face, pointed upwards, and drove by a nearby table where Madigan scrambled of her chair and ran for safety. Alex looked up, descending towards their table at a rapid rate, or the enormous black paw of the great winged cheetah statue nearly upon him. He drove off to the side, almost getting slammed across the room with the tip of a cheetah's stone wing, caught him on the back. Simber landed gracefully, though his wings flapped with so much force the wind blew the teacups right off their saucers. Enough! He roared, looking at Lani. Save your spells for your enemies! And after a moment of complete silence, the enormous creature, ceremonially folded in his rings, turned about carefully in the space between tables, and loped gracefully back through the dining room and down the hallway to his front entrance, where he leaped and assumed his normal position. Miss Morning rushed over the table, helping Lani sit up and checking to make sure Alex was okay. Sam had crawled back out from under the table and brushed himself off, and Megan returned wide eyes at Will. The room remained hushed, and four stood there looking at each other. Lani was still a bit pale and shaky, but otherwise unharmed. That is, if you don't count the pointing and laughing from others for days and years to come, for being the one who drove Simber just a little bit off over the edge. The four, no longer having much of an appetite, turned without further ado, made their way to the tubes, meeting again in the theater a split second later. There was no need to mention that event again. One of them wished to forget it entirely, while another hoped to remember it forever as the time the most frightening creature of all of our time came to his defense. Desperately, Alex wished it would set in motion a better, happier time. He bit his lip, thinking he was a big reason things weren't good now. He glanced at Lani, feeling bad about his outburst. He really needed to get a handle on things. Sorry, guys, he said as they walked towards their seat. I've been kind of a jerk lately. Megan smiled, and Sam punched Alex slightly on the shoulder. Lani just nodded and kept her eyes on the floor. It's okay, she said finally. The seats in the theater filled rapidly, and one could hear murmurs through the crowd, half of them discussing the drama of the dining room, and the other half wondering what could be so important as a promote meeting such as this, with all the creatures, students, instructor, families, even the little children required to attend. Simber and Florence appeared rather suddenly as well, standing there elegant tall near the back, and Megan wondered for a moment how they would have possibly fit in the tubes. But when Mr. Today walked briskly to the stage, all stray thoughts ceased along the buzz of the crowd. Most of the creatures sat near the front since they were shorter than the humans. The winged creatures hovered around the ceiling, including Jim, who sort of bounced up and down like a yo-yo in a slow flapping fashion. Each push down with his powerful wings brought him to the ceiling. Each flap allowed him to sink several feet, sometimes more. That the creature sitting directly below him glanced up nervously from time to time just to make sure he wasn't about to free fall and make feather cakes out of them. Good morning, Mr. Today said. The crowd was silent. Even the play prompts had held their tongues whenever Mr. Today began speaking. Though it was surely very difficult for them, especially when they could have such a large audience. Thank you for coming on such a short notice, which reminds me, has anyone seen Alex Stowe? What's that? Oh, he's here? Tremendous! The mage chuckled heartily and smiled in Alex's direction. The crowd laughed as well, some feeling quite relieved that Mr. Today was making a joke out of it. Alice turned bright red and grinned arrogantly, which turned out to be the best thing he could have done. It took off pressure enormously. Later, when he thought about it again, Alice was quite grateful for the attention. To the business of the day, task we might face, Mr. Today began in a serious voice. First of all, I do not wish to be frightened anymore. We all learned that it's enough fear of the unknown and Quill to strike us all in a panic on a whim, even years later. Fear is a difficult thing to unlearn. But you know, that is not my way of doing things. Rather, I called you all here this morning because I do not wish to hide anything from you. He paused, his eyes roaming the crowd. I have reason to believe, as I have made clear for the past several years, that we may at some points be discovered. You all know this. I never tried to hide it, and when our time is magic, it was created by my flawed human hands, and for perfection, completely safely, isolation is not something I have ever promised or I'll ever promise to you. Today, I come before you with nothing more than a bunch of inkling that sometime before the next class of Unwanted arrives a few months from now, and yes, sometime could mean next week or it could mean the day after the purge. But I rather think it would become somewhere between we will be discovered by the people of Quill. A wave of whisper passed from one end of the theater to the other. What will happen then, you may be asking? I do not have the answer. Perhaps nothing at all. But more likely is the high priest and her governors will be so furious that they will stop at nothing to kill us all. In silence that followed, no one panicked. Each member of the crowd realized they had been preparing for the days like this to come, and while nobody wanted it, everybody knew the purpose of magical warrior training and the potential danger that faced them. And since most humans in the room had faced death once before, this is not as a big shock to them as it might have been. And so, Mr. Today continued, today we begin preparing in earnest, and we shall be adding more group classes to help us better learn the benefits of fighting as warriors together rather than as individuals, each with his own plan. We will be doubling our instructions in spell casting and offering you opportunities to create spells of your own. You will have plenty of time to practice in class. Please do keep in mind that while I do not wish to tell you how to fight, for we will all have our differences, methods, and emotions involved in this issue. It is my personal policy to use lethal weapons and creative agility to fight. Some of you will feel it is wrong to kill another person no matter the reason, no matter that they once tried to kill you. You will no doubt create other means to protect yourself and those around you. Others of you still seethe with anger and spite of what the brainwashed people of Quill have done to you, and you will not hesitate to give them the same sentence they had once gave you, or at least the sentence they didn't stop from happening. To you, I ask only you begin now to consider your future actions and your motivations so that you are sure of your choices. I don't wish for anyone to live to regret a hasty decision for the rest of his life. Mr. Trey lowered his head for a moment and then went on in a strong voice. Be assured, my dear citizens, that it takes more than strength and intelligence to win a battle. It takes creativity and skill and common sense, and our time is brimming with it. Let's work together now, everyone, to maximize our ingenuity and skills, to grow stronger and confident, to take on any challenge that comes our way with reason and dignity. My greatest hope, he said in conclusion, is that my hunch is incorrect. But if it's not, we shall be prepared. Mr. Today folded his fingers together and bowed with his head slightly. The people of Wartime hesitated, then reeled together in cheers and applause for their beloved leader. The ruckus no one seemed to notice. Will, Blair, and Sam had sneaking away to the tubes. This is the end of this video. Bye!